The old spaceship creaked as it moved through the empty black of space. Inside, 5 people from Earth looked out at the stars. They were far from home, farther than any humans had ever gone before. "Look there," said Sarah, pointing at a small dot in the distance. "That must be it." Sarah was the team leader. She had short black hair and dark eyes that sparkled with excitement. Next to her stood Michael, a tall man with red hair. He was good with machines and had kept their ship running for months. "Are you sure that's it?" asked Lisa. She was the youngest of the group and always asked a lot of questions. Her long blonde hair floated in the low gravity of the ship. "It has to be," said John, the team's scientist. He adjusted his glasses and looked at the screens in front of him. "The signal is coming from there." The 5th member of the team, Alex, said nothing. He just watched the dot grow bigger as they got closer. For years, scientists on Earth had picked up strange signals from this part of space. No one knew what they meant or where they came from. Sarah and her team had been sent to find out. As they got closer, they saw it wasn't just a dot. It was a strange shape, like nothing they had ever seen before. It was made of a shiny material that seemed to change color as they watched. "It's beautiful," whispered Lisa. "And alien," added Michael. "Definitely not made by humans." Sarah felt her heart beating faster. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Proof that humans were not alone in the universe. "Let's go in for a closer look," she said. John carefully moved their ship closer to the alien object. As they got near, they saw it was much bigger than they thought. It was like a huge building floating in space. "There's an opening," said Alex, speaking for the first time. He pointed to a dark spot on the side of the alien structure. Sarah nodded. "Take us in, John." Slowly, their ship entered the opening. Inside, they found a large empty space. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed softly. "It's some kind of writing," said John, his eyes wide with wonder. "Can you read it?" asked Sarah. John shook his head. "No, but I can try to figure it out. It might take some time." "We have time," said Sarah. "This is the most important discovery in human history. We need to understand what it means." For days, they explored the alien structure. They found rooms filled with strange machines. They saw pictures of stars and planets they had never seen before. But most importantly, they found a room with a big screen. "I think I've figured out how to turn it on," said Michael one day. They all gathered around as Michael pressed some buttons. The screen came to life, showing a message in the strange alien writing. "John." Sarah looked at their scientist. John had been working day and night to understand the alien language. He looked at the screen, his face serious. I think I can read it," he said slowly, "but I'm not sure if I'm right." "What does it say?" asked Lisa, her voice shaking a little. John took a deep breath. "It says, 'Warning to all life forms, stay away from the planet known as Earth.'" The room went quiet. Everyone looked at each other, not sure what to say. "That can't be right," said Michael. "Why would there be a warning about Earth?" "Maybe you read it wrong," said Alex. But John shook his head. "I've checked it many times. That's what it says." Sarah felt a chill go down her spine. "We need to know more," she said. "We need to understand why this warning is here." As they stood there, looking at the strange message, they all had the same thought. They had come looking for answers about the universe. Instead, they had found a big question about their own home. "What do we do now?" asked Lisa, her voice small in the big alien room. Sarah looked at her team. She knew they were all thinking the same thing. Should they tell people on Earth about what they found, or should they keep it a secret? "We need to decide," said Sarah, "and whatever we choose will change everything." The sky over Earth was clear and blue. People went about their day as usual. No one knew that everything was about to change. Suddenly, a huge shadow fell over the planet. People looked up and gasped. A massive ship, bigger than any city, had appeared in the sky. In New York, A young woman named Emily was walking to work. She stopped and stared up at the sky, her mouth open in shock. All around her, people were doing the same. "What is that?" someone shouted. No one had an answer. In Washington, D.C., the president sat in a room with his advisors. They all looked worried. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the world," said one man. "The ship is everywhere. It's surrounding the entire planet." The president wiped sweat from his forehead. "Have they made contact?" Just then, every screen in the world went black. TVs, phones, computers, all of them showed the same thing. A face appeared. It wasn't human. The alien had blue skin and large, dark eyes. When it spoke, its voice was deep and echoed strangely. "People of Earth," it said, "we are the Galactic Empire. We have come to deliver a warning." In a small town in China, an old man named Wei watched the message on his old TV. His grandchildren huddled close to him, scared. "What do they want, grandfather?" asked the youngest. Wei shook his head. "I don't know, little one. Let's listen." The alien continued. "For thousands of years, we have watched your planet. We have seen your wars, your cruelty, your destruction of your own world." In a village in Africa, people gathered around the only TV in town. A woman named Amara translated for those who didn't understand the alien's words. "They say we are dangerous," she said, her voice shaking. The alien's face grew stern. "You must not leave your planet. The rest of the galaxy is not for you. If you try to explore space, we will stop you." In a space station high above Earth, astronauts floated in shock. They looked out the windows at the massive alien ship. "Does this mean our mission is over?" asked one. The commander didn't answer. She was too busy trying to contact Earth. Back on the ground, panic was spreading. In London, people ran through the streets. Some were crying, others were angry. "Who are they to tell us what to do?" shouted a man. "Maybe they're right," said another. "Look at what we've done to our own planet." The alien's message wasn't over. "We know some of you have already left Earth. They found something they should not have seen." In a secret room deep underground, Sarah and her team watched the broadcast. They looked at each other, fear in their eyes. "They know," whispered Michael. "They know what we found." The alien continued. "Those explorers must return immediately. The knowledge they have is dangerous." Sarah stood up. "We can't go back," she said. "We need to tell people what we know." John shook his head. "But what if the aliens are right? What if Earth really is dangerous?" Around the world, governments tried to respond. Military leaders wanted to fight. Scientists wanted to study the alien ship. Regular people didn't know what to think. In India, a group of students sat in their classroom, watching the message on a small phone. "I always believed there was life out there," said one girl. "But I never thought they'd be afraid of us." The alien's face grew softer. "We do not wish to harm you. This warning is for your own good, and for the good of the galaxy. Stay on Earth. It is where you belong." With that, the message ended. Screens around the world went back to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. The world had changed in just a few minutes. In the White House, the president stood up. "Get me the UN on the line," he said. "We need to decide how to respond." As night fell around the world, people looked up at the sky. The huge alien ship was still there, silent and waiting. No one knew what would happen next, but everyone knew that from this day on, everything would be different. 3 days had passed since the Galactic Empire's warning. The world was still in shock. People everywhere were asking questions, but answers were hard to find. In a large meeting room at the United Nations in New York, world leaders gathered. They sat around a big table, their faces serious and tired. The Secretary General stood up. "We're here to discuss the Empire's message," she said. "We need to decide what to do." Just then, the door burst open. Sarah and her team rushed in, out of breath. "Wait," Sarah shouted. You need to hear what we know." Guards moved to stop them, but the Secretary General held up her hand. "Let them speak," she said. Sarah took a deep breath. "We found something in space," she said. "An alien outpost. It had a warning about Earth." The room went quiet. Then everyone started talking at once. Silence. The Secretary General called. "Let them explain." John stepped forward. He looked nervous but determined. "The outpost had information about Earth's history," he said. "It's not what we think it is." He turned on a small device. A hologram appeared, showing strange symbols. "This is the alien language," John explained. "It says that Earth was once a prison planet." Gasps filled the room. A leader from Africa stood up. "What do you mean, a prison planet?" Lisa spoke up. "The aliens used Earth to exile their worst criminals," she said. "That's where humans came from. We're all descendants of those prisoners." The room erupted in chaos. Some leaders shouted that it couldn't be true. Others demanded more proof. Michael raised his voice. "There's more," he said. "The warning isn't just about us being dangerous. It's about what's on Earth." He pressed a button, and the hologram changed. It showed a map of Earth with strange glowing spots all over it. "These are alien technologies," Michael explained. "Left behind by the ancient aliens. They're incredibly powerful and dangerous." Alex, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "If we find these technologies, we could become a threat to the whole galaxy," he said. "That's why they want us to stay here." The room went silent. The leaders looked at each other, not sure what to believe. Meanwhile, outside the UN building, a huge crowd had gathered. People from all over the world were there, holding signs and shouting. Some signs said, "We have a right to explore space." Others read, "Listen to the Empire. Earth is our home." A young woman named Zura pushed her way to the front. She had flown all the way from Australia to be here. "We deserve to know the truth," she shouted. Her voice was picked up by news cameras. Inside the meeting room, a screen showed the crowds outside. The leaders watched, looking worried. The President of the United States stood up. "If what you're saying is true," he said to Sarah's team, "then we have a big decision to make." Sarah nodded. "We do," she said. "Do we accept what the Empire says and stay on Earth, or do we try to learn more about our true history?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then an old man stood up. He was the leader of a small country in Asia. "All my life," he said, "I believed we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not. But we also know that the universe fears us." He looked around the room. "We must decide who we want to be," he said. "The dangerous creatures they think we are, or something better." As he spoke, something strange happened outside. The sky lit up with bright lights. Everyone, inside and outside, looked up. The massive ship of the Galactic Empire was moving. It was coming closer to Earth. On screens all over the world, the alien face appeared again. "People of Earth," it said, "we know you have learned the truth. Now you must make a choice." The leaders in the room looked at each other. The people outside went quiet. Everyone knew that whatever happened next would change the fate of humanity forever. Sarah looked at her team, then at the world leaders. "So," she said, "what do we do now?" The whole world held its breath, waiting for an answer. The world was split in two. Some people wanted to listen to the Galactic Empire. Others wanted to fight back. Everywhere, there was arguing and confusion. In a small town in Brazil, a group called Earth First was growing. They believed humans should stay on Earth and forget about space. Maria, the group's leader, stood on a makeshift stage in the town square. "The Empire is right," she shouted to the crowd. "Earth is our home. We should stay here and fix our own problems." Many people cheered, but not everyone agreed. Across the ocean, in a big city in Japan, another group was forming. They called themselves the Star Seekers. They wanted to explore space no matter what. Hiroshi, The young computer expert was their leader. He spoke to a crowd from the roof of a tall building. "We can't let fear stop us," he said. "We have a right to know our true history." As both groups grew bigger, tensions rose. In some places, there were fights in the streets. Meanwhile, Sarah and her team were working hard. They had set up a lab in an old warehouse. They were trying to understand the alien technology they had found. "Look at this," John said one day. He pointed to a strange, glowing object. "I think it's some kind of energy source. It's more powerful than anything we have on Earth." Sarah frowned. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. John nodded. "Very. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could be a terrible weapon." Just then, Alex burst into the room. "We've got trouble," he said. "Someone leaked information about what we're doing here. There's a mob outside." They rushed to the windows. Sure enough, a large crowd had gathered. Some people were shouting angrily. Others held signs saying, "Show us the truth." Lisa looked worried. "What do we do?" she asked. Sarah thought for a moment. "We need to talk to them," she said. "They deserve to know what's going on." She walked outside to face the crowd. At first, people shouted and pushed. But when Sarah started to speak, they got quiet. "I know you're scared and confused," she said. "We all are. But fighting each other won't solve anything. We need to work together." As she spoke, something strange happened. The sky turned dark, even though it was the middle of the day. Everyone looked up. The Empire's ship was moving again. This time, it was coming down towards Earth. All over the world, people watched in fear and wonder. In New York, crowds filled Times Square, their eyes on the giant screens. In a small village in Africa, people gathered around an old radio, listening for news. Back at the UN, world leaders were still arguing. The Secretary General tried to keep order, but it was hard. Suddenly, all the screens in the room lit up. The alien face appeared again. "People of Earth," it said, "we see that you are divided. We will give you one chance to prove yourselves." The room went silent. Everyone held their breath. "We will land on your planet," the alien continued. "We will meet with your leaders. If you can show us that you are not a threat, we may change our minds." With that, the message ended. The room erupted in excited talk. The President of the United States stood up. "We need to prepare," he said. "This could be our only chance." As the news spread, people around the world reacted in different ways. Some were excited, others terrified. In her lab, Sarah looked at her team. "This is it," she said. "Everything we've learned, everything we've found. It all comes down to this meeting." Michael nodded. "But can we trust them?" he asked. "What if it's a trap?" Sarah didn't have an answer. She looked out the window at the darkening sky. The Empire's ship was getting closer. "I don't know," she said, "but we have to try. For the sake of everyone on Earth, we have to try." As night fell, the whole world waited. The biggest moment in human history was about to begin. The day of the meeting had arrived. The Galactic Empire's ship hovered over a large field outside New York City. The air was tense with excitement and fear. A group of world leaders stood waiting. Among them were the U.S. President, the Chinese Premier, and the Secretary General of the UN. Sarah and her team were there too, invited because of their discoveries. "Look," someone shouted. A bright light appeared on the bottom of the ship. Slowly, a door opened. 3 aliens walked out. They were tall, with blue skin and large eyes. They moved gracefully, as if the Earth's gravity didn't affect them much. The Secretary General stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice shaking a little. The tallest alien nodded. "I am Zor, representative of the Galactic Empire," it said. Its voice was deep and seemed to come from everywhere at once. As they talked, millions watched on screens around the world. In a small cafe in Paris, people leaned close to the TV, trying to hear every word. In a crowded market in Mumbai, A large screen showed the scene. Everyone had stopped to watch. The aliens and humans went into a big tent that had been set up for the meeting. Inside, they sat around a large table. "We have come to judge if Earth is ready to join the galactic community," Zor said. The U.S. president spoke up. "We've learned about our history," he said. "We know we come from criminals you sent here long ago. But we've changed. We've grown." Zor's large eyes blinked slowly. "Have you?" it asked. "We see wars, pollution, cruelty. How have you changed?" The leaders looked at each other, not sure what to say. Then Sarah stepped forward. "We may not be perfect," she said, "but we're trying to be better. Every day, people on Earth work to solve problems, to help others, to understand our world and the universe." She pulled out the strange glowing object from the lab. "We found this," she said. "We know it's powerful. But instead of using it as a weapon, we want to understand it, to learn from it." The aliens looked at each other, speaking in a language no one could understand. Meanwhile, outside the tent, a large crowd had gathered. People from the Earth First and Star Seekers groups were there. At first, they stayed apart, glaring at each other. But as they waited for news, something strange happened. They started to talk to each other. Maria from Earth First found herself standing next to Hiroshi from the Star Seekers. "I'm scared," Maria admitted. "What if they decide we're too dangerous?" Hiroshi nodded. "I'm scared too," he said, "but also excited. Think of all we could learn." As they talked, they realized they had more in common than they thought. Both wanted what was best for humanity, even if they disagreed on how to achieve it. Inside the tent, the meeting went on for hours. The aliens asked tough questions. The human leaders did their best to answer honestly. Finally, Zor stood up. "We have made our decision," it said. Everyone held their breath. The whole world seemed to pause. "Humanity has shown great potential," Zor said, "but also great danger. We will not fully welcome you to the galactic community yet." The leaders' faces fell, but Zor wasn't finished. However, it continued, "We will not isolate you either. We will watch and guide you. If you continue to grow and learn, you may one day join us among the stars." A cheer went up from the crowd outside. People hugged each other, crying with relief and joy. As the aliens prepared to leave, Sarah approached Zor. "Thank you for giving us a chance," she said. Zor looked at her with its large, wise eyes. "The journey ahead is long," it said, "but we believe you have the potential to become something great. Do not disappoint us." With that, the aliens returned to their ship. As it rose into the sky, people all over the world watched in awe. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, humanity faced it united, with hope and determination. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Empire's visit. Earth had changed a lot. People worked together more than ever before, but not everything was perfect. In a secret underground lab, Sarah and her team were hard at work. They had been studying the alien technology they found. Today was a big day. "Are you ready?" John asked, looking nervous. Sarah nodded. "Let's do it." They turned on a large machine. It hummed loudly. Suddenly, a small ball of light appeared in the air. "It worked," Lisa shouted. "We've created a mini wormhole." Everyone cheered. This was a huge step forward. With this technology, humans might one day travel quickly across space. But their celebration was cut short. Alarms started blaring. "What's happening?" Sarah yelled over the noise. Alex ran to a computer. His face went pale. "We've got a problem," he said. "The wormhole. It's growing." The ball of light was getting bigger. Things in the room started flying towards it. "Shut it down," Sarah ordered. Michael tried, but nothing worked. "I can't," he shouted. "It's out of control." They ran from the lab, sealing the doors behind them, but they could feel the ground shaking. "We need to warn everyone," Sarah said. This could be really bad. Meanwhile, in cities around the world, strange things were happening. In Tokyo, cars started floating off the ground. In Rio de Janeiro, the ocean began to swirl like a giant whirlpool. People panicked. They remembered the Galactic Empire's warning about the dangers of Earth's hidden technologies. World leaders gathered quickly for an emergency meeting. They argued about what to do. We should ask the Empire for help, some said. No, we need to solve this ourselves, others argued. As they debated, things got worse. The wormhole was affecting gravity all over the planet. In some places, people could jump incredibly high. In others, they could barely move. Sarah and her team raced to fix their mistake. They worked day and night, trying to find a way to close the wormhole. If we can't stop it, John said, looking tired, it might swallow the whole Earth. The news spread and fear gripped the world. But then, something amazing happened. People started coming together. Scientists from different countries shared their knowledge. Engineers worked on new machines to help. Regular people helped their neighbors cope with the strange gravity changes. Maria from Earth First and Hiroshi from Star Seekers put aside their old arguments. They organized teams to help those in need. We're all in this together, Maria said. Earth First or Star Seeker, it doesn't matter now. Hiroshi nodded. You're right. We need to save our home. Days passed. The wormhole grew bigger. Parts of some cities had been pulled in, vanishing to who knows where. Then Sarah had an idea. We can't close it, she said, but maybe we can move it. Her team looked at her in surprise. Move it where? Lisa asked. Sarah pointed up. Into space, away from Earth. It was a dangerous plan. They would have to get very close to the wormhole to attach rockets to the machine that created it. If we fail, we'll be pulled in, Michael warned. Sarah looked at her team. I know, but we have to try. They volunteered for the mission. As they prepared, the whole world watched and waited. The day came. Sarah and her team approached the lab in special suits. The wormhole was now a huge, swirling mass of light and energy. Ready? Sarah asked through her radio. Ready, her team replied. They stepped forward, fighting against the pull of the wormhole. Every step was a struggle. People around the world held their breath. This was humanity's moment of truth. Could they save themselves? Or would they need to call for help, proving the Empire right about their inability to handle advanced technology? As Sarah reached for the machine, a blinding light filled the sky. Everyone looked up, wondering, was this the end? Or a new beginning? The blinding light faded. Sarah blinked, trying to see. She was still there, still holding onto the machine. Her team was with her. We did it, John shouted. Look! The wormhole was moving. Slowly at first, then faster. It was rising into the sky, away from Earth. People around the world cheered. In New York, crowds hugged each other in the streets. In a small village in India, old men wiped tears from their eyes. But it wasn't over yet. The wormhole was in space now, but it was still growing. And it was pulling things towards it, satellites, space junk, even small asteroids. We need to close it, Sarah said, or it could threaten the whole solar system. Her team looked worried. They had used all their ideas getting the wormhole into space. What could they do now? Suddenly, a new voice came over their radio. Perhaps we can help. A huge ship appeared next to them. It was the Galactic Empire. Zor, the alien leader, stepped out in a spacesuit. We've been watching, it said. You've done well, but this is beyond your current abilities. Sarah felt a mix of relief and disappointment. They had come so far, but in the end, they still needed help. Zor seemed to understand. Do not be discouraged, it said. You have shown great courage and ingenuity. That is why we will not simply fix this for you. We will show you how, so you can learn. For the next few hours, humans and aliens worked side by side. The Empire shared some of their advanced knowledge. Sarah and her team absorbed it quickly, amazed at what they were learning. Finally, they were ready. Together, they activated a device that the Empire had helped them build. It shot a beam of energy into the wormhole. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the wormhole began to shrink. Smaller and smaller it got, until with a final flash, it disappeared. There was silence for a moment. Then cheers erupted from Earth to space. They had done it. As they headed back to Earth, Zor spoke to Sarah. "You have passed a great test," it said, "not just in solving this crisis, but in how you came together to face it." Sarah nodded. "We've learned so much," she said, "about the universe and about ourselves." When they landed, crowds were waiting. People from all over the world had come to welcome them. Sarah saw Maria and Hiroshi in the front, smiling and waving. The Secretary General stepped forward. "On behalf of all humanity," she said, "thank you. To our own heroes, and to the Galactic Empire." Zor bowed slightly. "You have earned a place among the stars," it said. "We will welcome Earth into the galactic community." The crowd cheered again. It was a new era for humanity. In the days that followed, things changed quickly. The Empire shared more of their knowledge. Humans learned about new forms of energy, ways to clean up their planet, and how to travel faster than light. But they also kept their promise to be careful. A new global organization was formed to oversee the use of advanced technology. Sarah was chosen to lead it. "We have a big responsibility," she told her team. "We need to use this knowledge wisely." As Earth took its first steps into the galactic community, people looked to the stars with new eyes. They saw not just distant lights, but future homes, new friends, and endless possibilities. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges and hard decisions. But humanity had learned an important lesson. When they worked together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. On a hill overlooking the city, Sarah stood with her friends. They watched as the first Earth ship prepared for its maiden voyage to a distant star. "So," Michael asked, "what's next?" Sarah smiled. "Everything," she said. "The whole universe is waiting for us." As the ship rose into the sky, carrying the hopes and dreams of Earth with it, a new chapter in human history began. The journey that started with a warning had led to a bright new future among the stars.